Tangent, surreal videos. So when I pitched this topic to voting patrons, I think I said that I was going to do a curated collection of surreal and obscure internet videos and provide a detailed commentary and analysis. I need to admit at the outset that I have abandoned obscure as a criterion. It sounded cool in my head when I proposed this as a topic, but I kind of realized it would be more interesting to do a history of surreal internet videos that were influential on me and that I have some kind of emotional relationship with. And I found that most of the videos that I feel really attached to are actually pretty famous. Like, don't get me wrong, I do have private playlists of obscure videos with like less than 2,000 views. I'm going to keep my secrets is what I'm saying. But I also think I have more to say about the videos that are famous already. And I also have a kind of oppositional attitude to most of the commentary that exists on these videos, which I think justifies this tangent's existence. I'm going to be talking about a lot of videos that if you're the kind of person who's into, this sort of thing, you've probably heard of most, if not all of the videos that I'm going to cover, but I have an angle, and I hope that angle makes the topic tangent-worthy. So I've selected a collection of surreal internet videos going back to 2004, the pre-YouTube era, up to the 2020s. And I think a reason I initially included obscure in this topic is that looking back on my personal relationship to surreal internet videos, I feel like I often felt watching these videos for the first time that I was discovering something obscure. And of course, in retrospect, it turns out that every hipster of my entire generation was watching these videos. But part of the fun, especially of the early internet, was this feeling of obscurity, right? This feeling that you were discovering something new. If you were a teenager in the 2000s watching Salad Fingers or I Feel Fantastic for the first time, you felt like you were discovering this hidden, disturbing secret, something that other kids at school would pass around, something adults had no idea about or disapproved of. It's like the character Jeffrey Beaumont in David Lynch's movie Blue Velvet, who says that by following this mystery, he feels like he's seeing something that was always hidden.
I'm seeing something that was always hidden. I'm involved in a mystery. I'm in the middle of a mystery, and it's all secret.
That to me is the rush, the thrill of surreal internet videos, and it is something that I'm going to try to capture as I narrate my experience to you. What is surrealism? Before we get into actual videos, I feel like I want to do a little preface about surrealism. I don't know why I always begin these tangents with definitions and etymologies. I feel like it's a bad habit carried over from academia. God, I tried so hard to quit. I didn't realize that going to grad school for 2 years is enough to make you boring the rest of your life. Our good friend André Breton wrote in the 1920s a manifesto of surrealism. His dictionary definition goes, surrealism, noun, psychic automatism, dictated by the thought in the absence of any control exercised by reason, exempt from any aesthetic or moral concern. Psychic automatism means you have no filter. Unrestrained yapping. Probably a good slogan for this tangent. He said, quote, I believe in the future resolution of these two states, dream and reality, which are seemingly so contradictory, into a kind of absolute reality, a surreality. All of this is a lot of words to say that surrealism is a stylistic sensibility inspired by dreams. So surreal is one of those you know it when you see it concepts, but I'm going to try to do better by way of explanation than that, because it's my job. It's what you're paying me for. If you want to know what makes something surreal, ask, what makes it feel like a dream? What makes anything feel like a dream? What are dreams?
What are frogs? Right. What are frogs?
Well, let's start by talking about a concrete example. So take the movie Inception. What's amazing to me about Inception is how not surreal it is. Inception is a movie that takes place mostly in dreams that somehow manages to at no point actually feel like a dream. So what is it that makes Inception not surreal, not dreamy? A lot of times people compare Inception to the anime Paprika, which is interesting because I think Paprika is surreal, but Inception isn't. Why is that? Well, Inception is a very tightly scripted action movie where everything that happens follows from something else in a chain of causal events with characters whose motivations are easy to understand. Whereas the first time you watch Paprika, it just feels like this onslaught of images that you can't really make any sense of until you watch it like the 7th time. It reminds me of this video where South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker give a lecture on how to write a TV episode where they say that every story beat that occurs should follow from a previous story beat in a way that could be connected by the word therefore. So X happens, therefore Y happens, therefore Z happens. They contrast that with what they consider bad or sloppy or amateur writing, where there's a lot of events that are connected not by therefore, but by the phrase and then.
We can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words and then belong between those beats, you're f***ed.
So they say bad writing has a sequence of events where one doesn't really follow from the previous one, whereas good writing has a series of story beats that are connected by therefore. I'm not even going to disagree with Stone and Parker here, because if what you are writing is a mainstream TV crime drama, then yes, every event should be connected by a therefore, and everything should all kind of come together in the end so you can see the logical sequence between each element. And that's fine for an episode of Law and Order or whatever, but it does not apply if you are, for example, David Lynch. In the opening of Blue Velvet, we see Jeffrey's dad watering the lawn, an idyllic suburban scene. The hose catches, a metaphor for the stroke that Jeffrey's dad is about to have, passing out on the front lawn, and then the camera sinks down into the grass where you see this world of teeming horrible insects. Why are we looking at teeming horrible insects? What is the therefore here? Well, there isn't one in the conventional cause and effect sense, but that doesn't mean it's random either. It means that David Lynch's movies are built on dream logic. What does that mean? What is dream logic? Well, it's patterns of thinking that do not correspond to the ordinary rules of waking life. Waking life is governed by rules like Newtonian physics. No matter how good a mood I am in, I cannot fly. In waking life, we are stuck in consistent Euclidean space. If I'm happy in this room and then I leave and come back when I'm sad, the room is still the same, and things seem to follow classical logical rules, like the law of non-contradiction, so either X or not X, or the law of identity, which says that everything is identical with itself. For every X, X equals X. I am me. The lamp is a lamp. Dreams do not follow any of the normal rules of waking life. In dreams, even logical laws can be broken. The law of identity can be broken. When someone describes a dream to you, they'll often say something like, I was with my mother, but she wasn't really my mother. It's very hard to explain how this could be the case, but I feel like we've all had this experience in dreams, right? I was in the school I attended as a child, but it also wasn't that school. It was also a water park, right? The thing is not identical with itself. And so surreal storytelling follows dream logic. So surreal plot lines or plot webs follow emotionally and symbolically constructed space and narrative. It's not random if the artist knows what they're doing, but things are not connected by a logical therefore either. None of this is to say that surrealism has to follow Freudian doctrine. A lot of the first generation of surrealists were very inspired by Freud, but in my opinion, if anything, that is bad. Artists should not know about psychoanalysis. It corrupts their innocence. And I know a lot of you guys are annoyed at me for venerating the pseudoscientist Freud as my daddy figure. But in this tangent, I'm going to prove you wrong by talking some trash about Freud, by killing my father, if you will. Psychoanalysis is one tool for making sense out of surreal art, but too much of it is definitely bad. For every one of these videos I'm going to talk about, there's 10 video essays on YouTube explaining what does it all mean. Stop it. Stop trying to make it make sense. You're doing surrealism wrong. Hitchcock's Psycho literally ends with a psychiatrist coming out and explaining to everyone what it all means.
I got the whole story, but not from Norman. I got it from his mother.
Is that really what you people want? Psychiatrist monologues at the end of every movie? I admire what Roger Ebert said about David Lynch's movie Mulholland Drive. He said, Mulholland Drive isn't like Memento, where if you watch it closely enough, you can hope to explain the mystery. There is no explanation, There may not even be a mystery. Stop trying to solve art like a Rubik's Cube. I'm gonna do some analysis in this video, but I really want to emphasize that you do not need analysis to enjoy surrealism. Symbols and associations are quote-unquote unconscious exactly because you are initially unable to explain them. On the first viewing of a surreal video, don't analyze it. Just experience it. Ride the ride. Dream the dream. And either it emotionally works for you or it doesn't. Symbols and associations are felt, but not rationally articulated. Then if you really like a work of art so much you're willing to put time into it, then you can identify symbols and motifs and associations and make the implicit explicit. Okay, let's move on to the videos. I feel like I need to put an awkward content warning here because it's funny, I was expecting this video to be like super lightweight and kind of a bullshit tangent, frankly, but it actually gets really, really heavy. I think because surrealism can be pleasant and relaxing, but most of the videos on my list have nightmare elements. I guess dream logic is emotional logic, and we tend to get emotional about topics that are heavy. So here's the most generic possible content warning. Sex, violence, the abject. I've chosen these videos autobiographically, and I will go through them chronologically. Because most of these are pretty famous, a lot of people in my generation will have watched these at the same age when I did. And if you're not in my generation, well, here's some recommendations for things to watch next time you get high. Salad Fingers. We are starting with Salad Fingers, originally a flash animation created by David Firth and posted to Newgrounds in 2004. So we are starting before YouTube existed. Salad Fingers is about a creepy pervert with salad for fingers who wanders an apocalyptic wasteland groping rusty spoons from which he derives orgasmic pleasure.
The feeling of rust against my salad fingers is almost orgasmic.
The full series now amounts to an hour and a half of content. Themes include loneliness, self-harm, masochism, abuse, cannibalism, and worst, relentless misophonia triggers. Ugh. I first saw Salad Fingers pretty close to when it first came out, probably 2004, 2005, maybe 2006. I was in high school, I was at my friend John's house, and he showed me these videos on the computer, and it really disturbed me. In the second episode, Salad Fingers cooks a boy in the oven like the witch in a Brothers Grimm fairy tale.
That fish smells about done.
That was the moment I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this. But of course I did. We all did. If you were a teenager in the 2000s in the Anglosphere and you were like, you know, a freak, you definitely saw Salad Fingers. I've seen people compare Gen Alpha's fixation on Skibbity Toilet to Salad Fingers, but I don't think that comparison is fair because Salad Fingers is way more disturbing than anything that happens in Skibbity Toilet.
You're half my age.
Recently, a Canadian teacher was suspended, basically fired it seems, for showing Salad Fingers to a middle school class, along with a couple other videos on this list. Parents are so precious about their angry, horny, blister-popping 14-year-old angels. Like, this idea of the purity of 15-year-olds is like so discordant with my memory of being that age. My memory is that kids were sticking pencils through blisters and burning themselves with cigarettes.
I like it when the red water comes out.
I feel like teenagers actually have a higher tolerance for the macabre than adults have. Because it sucks to be a teenager, right? You have like adult urges all of a sudden, but you have no freedom and no control of your own life. So Salad Fingers is for the teens. That said, I can see how Salad Fingers in school might be over the line for some people.
Maybe you can come and tuck me in tonight, sailor.
That's part of what made Salad Fingers fun when you were a teenager, was the sense that it was this like forbidden secret, this thing that every adult in your life would definitely disapprove of. It made you feel like you were breaking the rules. And isn't that what teenagers are supposed to do?
Just wait until your father gets...
I Feel Fantastic. Sometime in the late 1990s, a guy called John Bergeron created a female android named Tara. John first posted online about Tara around Y2K on Usenet. I'm actually too young to have any personal experience on Usenet, but maybe a Gen Xer in the comments can fill us in. In 2004, John started selling on his website DVDs of music videos featuring Tara, one of which was uploaded to YouTube by some creepypasta channel who wrote a video description comparing John and Tara to the story of Pygmalion, the ancient Greek sculptor who fell in love with his creation. I remember people passing this around in the late 2000s. Everyone thought it was so scary. And I remember thinking it was scary, which is kind of weird to me now because when I watch this video, like, she ate, she served. What are we scared of here? I feel like this is an epical shift in aesthetic sensibilities where this type of uncanny woman used to seem like this like creepy, horrifying thing. And now we're just like used to seeing women that look like that. Why is this surreal? Well, I assume you don't need me to rehash why people find androids in general to be uncanny. It does remind me of this entire genre of creepy internet videos from this era, all of which had like the uncanny woman as like the central scare factor. There's a video called There Is Nothing.
There is nothing.
A video called My Sister EXT. And of course, the Rejuveneek video manual.
Place the mask into position as before and get ready for a real treat.
I feel like with the Tara video, part of what is scary is not the robot, but the windows. It's kind of weird to have so many windows with no curtains and no blinds, and outside is just pitch blackness. Like, you know those liminal space images where part of the creepiness seems to derive from like a darkened doorway that like unconsciously like makes you afraid of the unknown? I feel like there's some of that going on here. Obviously, a lot of the creepiness here came from the framing of this as like some perverse love story between a man and his robot. Honestly, it does remind me a little bit of the BTK killer who would like dress up in this like very crude, like clownish femme mask and take pictures of himself in the poses of his victims. I did find a deep dive on Tara the Android by a YouTuber called Debunk File, who claims that John Bergeron was trying to sell the android on Usenet and at times suggesting that she could be used as a sex robot. I don't like that. That does kind of ruin the video for me. The idea that Tara's creator is like trying to pimp her out on Usenet. That makes the videos creepy again for not fun reasons. It takes us back into sex doll territory. Speaking of sex dolls, Possibly in Michigan. Possibly in Michigan is a 1983 short film by a director called Cecilia Condit. Possibly in Michigan is, quoting from the video description, a musical horror story about two young women who are stalked through a shopping mall by the cannibal named Arthur. He follows them home, and here the victims become the aggressors. The film has seen a surprising surge in popularity on TikTok recently, as people have excerpted parts of the audio, which is very distinctive.
No, silly.
But some of the lines are inexplicably sung in this kind of eldritch recitative.
Smells like mother's crazy sister Kate.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I do. Well, she put her poodle one time in a microwave oven.
I think Possibly in Michigan and many of Cecilia's other films are very good. I describe them as surreal short films about womanhood and fear, often bringing a feminist angle to the kind of surreal sexual horror. Before Possibly in Michigan, Cecilia Condit had actually directed another film called Beneath the Skin, which is about a girl who discovers that her boyfriend had murdered his ex and was keeping her body in a trunk under where they slept, which is based on a thing that actually happened to Cecilia Condit. She had dated Ira Einhorn, aka the Unicorn Killer, who had murdered his ex-girlfriend and hidden her corpse in the closet, which Cecilia didn't notice because she was taking a medication that inhibited her sense of smell.
I had this dream that was so real. I dreamed that it was me and not her that he killed 2 years ago.
That is a pretty shocking and traumatizing thing to go through.
Do you like scary movies or things that are scary?
No, I don't. I'm very sensitive to scary. I get frightened very easily.
And you make stuff that's scary because?
I'm so frightened.
At the end of Possibly in Michigan, the two women turn against Arthur the cannibal and they get revenge. So that's good. It's good when you get revenge. The reason I say sex doll is that Arthur is, I believe, played by Cecilia herself, and is wearing a mask that Cecilia Condit apparently got from a dental school. But it reminds me of a sex doll. Surrealism. Pickle Surprise. In 2006, a YouTuber posted a video called Pickle Surprise.
It's a surprise! Pickle Surprise! Pickle Surprise!
The video was created by the artist Tom Rubnitz in 1989 and stars a number of drag queens who would later become somewhat famous, including Lady Bunny and RuPaul, who you may have heard of. I first saw Pickle Surprise in 2006 and I instantly adored it.
Did I say Repeat my mantra.
I had no idea what I was watching. I think this is the first time I'd ever really seen drag as an art form. And my favorite part of this memory is that the first time I saw this video, I had no idea that these were drag queens. My 16-year-old brain really looked at this video and thought, yep, these are unclockable biological females. There's nothing unusual here. I love that though. I was fully buying the illusion, the magic of drag. There's that, I think it's a Douglas Adams quote, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, I feel like that also applies to art. Any art form that you don't have experience in also feels like magic. So when you don't know anything about makeup or drag or gender performance, you just kind of naively experience hillbilly RuPaul as real a woman as any of our mothers. And you know what? Who's to say she isn't? Surrealism. Tom Rubnitz also directed several other videos that have this same kind of psychedelic glitter drag surrealist vibe. A lot of them are on YouTube. I guess they have my endorsement. Tom sadly died of AIDS-related illness in 1992 when he was basically my age. Looking back on his videos, I feel like this is so ahead of its time. This is decades before Adult Swim, decades before Omega Mart. I guess we do need to pause to ask, from a 2024 perspective, is Pickle Surprise transphobic?
Where's the pickle? That's the surprise! Pickle Surprise!
Is this transphobic is a question that actually comes up surprisingly often when you're dealing with surreal videos, in part because I think that a lot of people find something sort of surreal or uncanny about gender bending itself, so it comes up a lot. Obviously, the premise of Pickle Surprise is kind of adjacent to the whole trap trope that is very harmful to trans women. I don't think this video should be made now, but it wasn't made now, it was made in the 80s. And as far as I'm concerned, a pioneering queer artist who died from AIDS in 1992 has a pass to do whatever. He did his time. He suffered for the cause. And anyway, as far as transphobia is concerned, Pickle Surprise looks really good compared to what I'm about to show you next. Obey the Walrus. Obey the Walrus is an ancient viral video that has a pretty upsetting backstory, but this tangent has already had cannibalism, femicide, and sex dolls, so, you know, why stop there? I'm not trying to monetize this video. Okay, I'm just gonna play the video and then I'll tell the story.
La pequeña araña en un tubo se subió.
So the video shows a tap-dancing, transgender, disabled drag queen named the Goddess Bunny, aka Sandy Crisp, and the video poster added this like creepy music that's like it's like a Spanish version of the Itsy Bitsy Spider played backwards. This video was posted to E-Bombs World in 2006 and then basically disseminated as creepypasta after that. Do people know what E-Bombs World is? I feel like I need to explain this one for people 10 years older or younger than me. E-Bombs World was a Web 1.0 website owned by some guy. This was before social media was big, so if you wanted to watch content on the internet, you had to have it curated for you by a website owned by some guy. And in the case of E-Bombs World, I think the guy in question sucked because this place was a cesspit. The comments section under the Obey the Walrus video is very depressing. It's just a bunch of slurs and transphobia and ableism. So, you know, exactly the same as the internet is now. In retrospect, it basically just looks like a hate video that is using transness and disability as basically a kind of monstrosity to scare people. I'm somewhat heartbroken to admit that when I first saw this video as a teenager, I did think it was scary, but you know, it's a lot to take in and make sense of when you're a 16-year-old who thinks that Lady Bunny is unclockably biological. The performer in this video is, of course, an actual human being with a backstory, and it's a pretty interesting backstory, which is why I feel like this video is worth bringing up. The goddess Bunny, aka Sandy Crisp, was a drag performer who had a long career doing shows in Hollywood and Vegas. She'd had polio as a child and apparently suffered medical malpractice of some kind and was disabled as a result of that. There is a 1998 documentary about her life called The Goddess Bunny.
We are going to delve into the life of the only truly glamorous star left in Hollywood.
You can watch the documentary on the Internet Archive, and I have watched it. It's pretty interesting, but be aware if you go into this that this was from a different era of queer history, and there is very much a John Waters kind of anti-politically correct sensibility here. Goddess Bunny was part of this queer underground that would do things like reenacting the Manson family crimes, displaying art by John Wayne Gacy. She did a stunt involving dressing up as a quote-unquote AIDS terrorist.
Where I actually took egg white, toilet paper, and eyeshadow and made the bruises and the lesions, and he apparently sent them to Washington, D.C. and to our governors, trying to get across to the industry that if the government did not help with the AIDS victims that were out there at the present time, that this could possibly happen. I guess I was the first poster child for AIDS victims.
I'm not necessarily super invested in defending like 80s queer edginess. I just feel like it informs the background of the video that became Obey the Walrus, because you can watch that clip from the documentary with different music. I do think the intent is to be kind of spooky.
We do the Frankenstein rock. We do the Frankenstein rock.
But I feel like I'm allowed to still be kind of angry that the most boring, cruel assholes on the planet turned this into like a freak show video. You know, God forbid a disabled transgender drag queen do anything. I do feel like internet comments sections are making our culture more conservative and conformist. It's hard for honest to God weirdos to thrive online because we have to incessantly get feedback from boring assholes. Oh, another thing I need to warn you about is that the director of the documentary, The Goddess Bunny, which I just suggested that you watch for free on Internet Archive, is a guy called Nick Bugas, who is a racist cartoonist, most infamous for having drawn the so-called Happy Merchant caricature, which has become the internet Nazi anti-Semitic meme of the century. There's a lot of layers to this story, a lot to keep track of. But if I can make this all about me again for a moment, I guess this does kind of force me to reflect on the fact that, like, as a teenager, this was probably one of the first depictions I saw of a transgender person, and it was in this, like, scary freak show video. It does kind of explain a particular kind of brokenness in the brain that I suffer from. I feel like essential to who I am as a person is the struggle with feelings of monstrosity. It's part of what attracts me to surrealism too, is that gendered deviance is often thematized. Salad Fingers is kind of effeminate, isn't he?
Maybe you can come and tuck me in tonight, sailor.
There's an episode where he wears a dress, an episode where he lactates. I definitely do not love gender ambiguity being invoked as a kind of uncanny horror show, but there's also a kind of freedom in claiming your own monstrosity. In dreams, in surrealism, you can break the law of identity, so identities tend to become unstable. Men can become women, women can become men. I enjoy this. Anyway, don't romanticize the early internet. Yes, it was less corporate, but it was still a cesspit, and there were still Nazis everywhere. Lasagna Cat. On January 14th, 2008, 27 videos were simultaneously uploaded to a channel called Lasagna Cat. Each video began with a live-action enactment of a Garfield cartoon.
Oh no! I'm using the cat brush!
Followed by a canned laugh track and the comic, and then a music video that elaborated on the themes of that strip. Now, I'll be honest, I think I did see some of these in the early 2010s, but I don't think I ever really got it. I did not have the vision to understand what this was all building towards. But then, on February 23, 2017, the channel simultaneously published 11 new videos, the first of which is titled July 27th, 1978, and which I would argue is one of the best YouTube videos ever made. The video stars John Blythe Barrymore talking for 60 minutes about a single Garfield comic strip, elaborating every possible interpretation of this one 3-panel strip: textual, metatextual, spiritual, philosophical, physical, metaphysical, geometrical.
A 3-panel comic strip that, though simple as it seemed, changed me, changed my being.
The monologue is accompanied by Philip Glass's soundtrack to the Martin Scorsese movie Kundun about the Dalai Lama. The particular Garfield strip discussed in this video is what is now known as the pipe strip. In the first panel, John is reading his newspaper and he taps with his hand on the side table. In the second panel, he wonders, now where could my pipe be? And in the third panel, John screams, Garfield! And we see that it is in fact Garfield who is smoking John's pipe. The joke being that it's unexpected that a cat would smoke tobacco out of a pipe built for a man. Now, some people say that Garfield as a comic strip is actually not funny at all, and the entire point of the Lasagna Cat channel is to basically make fun of Jim Davis for making a not funny thing. I don't agree with that. I think we need to go deeper.
The purple pipe in Garfield's mouth. How could a mere mortal even make this? And then we put a picture of the planet in the third panel over Garfield. It still works. I have cried. I've cried, I've cried. I've cried over this piece.
Okay, I admit that I first watched the pipe strip when I was on acid and my friend put this video on and I had to keep pausing it every 5 minutes because I could not stop laughing.
John Arbuckle's clothing. I have replicas.
This was recently after I had quit grad school, and I think part of the reason the video is so funny to me is that the monologue genuinely reveals that the line between academic textual analysis and schizo rambling is actually alarmingly thin. I have known people, serious people, who've devoted years of their life to producing a thesis that more or less resembles this monologue on the pipe strip. Except instead of Garfield, it's about 2 stanzas of Emily Dickinson or whatever. The difference is that most academic dissertations are not funny, and the pipe strip is funny. And as far as I'm concerned, you can be as schizo as you want as long as you're funny. To me, the pipe strip video is just 60 minutes of bliss. I've watched it in full at least 20 times, and every single time it lifts my mood. It remains for me one of the best videos to watch on drugs. It's very safe. I think in part because, okay, in particular, if I'm if I'm tripping and I'm watching the pipe strip video, when you're tripping, you're very suggestible. So I will actually find myself getting sincerely invested in this sort of philosophical or spiritual subject matter, only to then be reminded that we're talking about Garfield, which causes me to I feel like it's a spiritual laughter that it elicits from me. And to some extent, I'm willing to defend the pipe strip video as an authentic spiritual text. It's sort of monadology of the philosopher Leibniz, where the idea is that all of reality is sort of fractal and each particle contains the whole of the cosmos. If that's true, then it's also true that one Garfield comic strip contains the fundamental truth of reality to anyone with eyes to see that. And you can ridicule me for thinking that, but you know what? I don't owe the internet an explanation of my esoteric beliefs about Garfield.
It still works.
The final video posted by Lasagna Cat to date is a video called Sex Survey Results, which is a 4.5 excruciating hours of mannequins showing up at Jim Davis's door, saying their number of sex partners. Was that a gunshot or a firework? At the end of Sex Survey Results, John is confronted with his own doppelganger who says he's had 0 sex partners.
John Arbuckle, 2. John Arbuckle, 0.
At which point, John transforms into a older version of himself that resembles Jim Davis. He then wanders down the liminal nighttime street as actual clips of Jim Davis interviews play.
By virtue of being a cat, he's not young or old or male or female either. For some reason, human failings are very endearing in an animal.
In one, Jim Davis says that Garfield is not young or old or male or female either, suggesting that Garfield is in fact a kind of being beyond any kind of predicate that we would usually ascribe to something human. Jim Davis finally wanders to the mountains and confronts a sort of shamanistic live-action version of Garfield, before whom Jim Davis transforms into worms. And then finally, a Polish girl. Polish is one of the most surreal languages, it is known. The Polish girl has a miscarriage in a public toilet, and we see a stillborn baby wearing John Arbuckle's shirt beside a live orange cat, implying that Garfield has outlived and replaced Jim Davis. The two John Arbuckles, one of whom becomes Jim Davis, is a common surrealist theme, that of doppelgangers. Again, the issue is identity, as it usually is with doppelgangers. Whether Jim Davis is identical with John Arbuckle to some extent, and whether both of them have been superseded by the overwhelming presence of Garfield. Big if true. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a parody children's musical puppet show that descends into surreal horror and madness. It's very well produced and probably the most famous video on my list. Each episode revolves around a Sesame Street style song that you would associate with educational children's TV. It activates something in your brain which reminds you of childhood, which leaves you more vulnerable when the episode twists into horror. The first episode is about being creative, but creative thinking turns out to be limitless thinking, therefore surreal thinking, therefore horrifying thinking. In the best moment of the episode, the puppets become CGI, and the set rotates, and in this rotation, the characters change from puppets to humans in costumes. One of them also seemingly changes gender. It works as a really seamless, mind-bending violation of the law of identity. Episode 2 is about time, and ultimately the horror of aging and decay.
Make it stop!
Episode 3 transforms anodyne children's TV messaging about love and togetherness into a nightmare of cult recruitment.
And now we all worship our king. Our king. Huh?
Again, this really works for me because a lot of cults actually do kind of rely on this kind of preschool regression to like the classroom sing-along. There's videos of the Heaven's Gate UFO suicide cult that really do feel like this kind of preschool sing-along. It shows that the cult's promise of love is genuinely alluring, and the alternative to the cult is never really all that appealing.
He seems upset about something.
To live on the outside of a cult is to have to be able to cope with a lot of selfish, indifferent people who don't really care that much about you. Episode 4 is about computers. It captures the mania and then the horror of a dawning digital age. The Red character gets sucked into this frantic online loop of information while his offline life becomes dark and alone. I feel like this captures the accelerated, addictive element of living your life online. Episode 5 is probably the most horrifying one. It starts out as a parody of the contradictory nonsense advice of diet culture.
The food groups can easily be sorted using the simple health shape.
But winds up in the very upsetting territory of waking up during surgery and cannibalism. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared has also been made into a whole TV series that came out in 2022, which I actually haven't seen. I guess I should go watch that. Not really an internet video at that point. Run for the QB. In 2011, the YouTube channel runforthecube, or as it's correctly pronounced, runforthecube, began uploading videos teaching people how to correctly pronounce English words.
We're kind. We're kind.
Okay, it actually started with non-English names that are legitimately difficult for English speakers to pronounce.
Kirkjuba Ijar, Klayustur Aikiland. Kirkjuba Ijar, Klayustur Aikiland.
But it kind of evolved into a systematic new pronunciation of the English language itself.
Workish dear Sayuri Sayuki. Workish dear Sayuri. Sayuki.
But the channel really came to prominence with 2014's Jilai Bilai Pete Rat Kumai Kandai, in which we see a first-person view of runforthecub's hands in green latex medical gloves unwrapping and dissecting a jelly belly gummy rat.
Kutuyutai's eyeball. Kutuyutai's eyeball.
Many people were very disturbed by this combination of the implied animal dissection and the bizarre mispronounced English, and as always, the androgyny of the protagonist's voice.
I wonder if Pete Rat has a brain. I wonder if Pete Rat has a brain.
This is definitely one of those videos that I've kind of internalized to a level that's a little bit alarming. Sometimes I'll be trying to sit quietly in meditation upon Garfield, and my intrusive thoughts will all be, Taimi tu kamia livey, escapi the pataki.
Taimi tu kamia livey. As
with a lot of surreal internet videos, many people have a tendency to kind of form conspiracy theories about the video or the person behind it. In this case, often suggesting that runforthecube is perhaps some kind of serial killer. It really says a lot about the hypocrisy of society that we treat actual real live rats like this in labs all across America and the world, and yet one androgynous weirdo dissects a gummy rat and everyone freaks out. I feel like latent uneasiness with animal cruelty is actually often a theme in these surreal videos. Meat comes up a lot. It's in Salad Fingers. It's in Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Often meat implies cannibalism. I think at the end of the day, humans are animals, and there's some part of us that like anxiously recognizes that there's not quite enough difference between meat eating and cannibalism for comfort. A lot of horror media plays on that ambiguity. Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes to mind, which has been called a movie about meat, human and otherwise. Hannibal Lecter, obviously. Sometimes I think parts of the book of Leviticus were maybe written to protect people from this anxiety. That's a little bit of a reach. I don't want to be like reading too deeply into surreal internet videos. I just wanted to dream. I just wanted to escape. Kamia livey.
But everybody's like he tries to make that diamonds on your tiny piaki, shit planets, Aslands, tigers, and a godly ass we don't carry.
Unedited footage of a bear. Unedited footage of a bear is a 2014 video uploaded to YouTube by the Adult Swim channel. Adult Swim obviously being TV programming, but I feel like people are mostly watching it online. This was part of a series called Infomercials that I think originally aired on like Cartoon Network around like 4 a.m. to startle high people. Started with Too Many Cooks, which is a 80s sitcom style opening that goes on for 11 minutes and changes genre several times, and a serial killer subplot sort of manifests itself. Why am I not talking about Too Many Cooks? I don't know, because it just seemed too obvious to me. Unedited footage of a bear begins as footage of a bear, which is then interrupted after 15 seconds by what appears to be a mid-roll ad for a allergy drug called Claradril. But the Claradril ad is 10 minutes long and is basically the entire video.
So you can get back to what matters most.
In the ad, a mother says, sometimes being a mom is like having to be in two places at once.
Sometimes being a mom is like having to be in two places at once.
And so, of course, doppelganger horror ensues. The implication is that the mom from the commercial becomes a Claradril junkie and experiences Claradril-induced psychosis. She lives on one of those uncanny American suburban streets that feels like a simulation. There's something about these suburban American developments built in the last 20 years in particular that just feels really surreal. We talked about this a little bit in the Liminal Spaces video. Part of it is that every house on the block is kind of a doppelganger of the others. A decade ago, I did election canvassing in Loudoun County, Virginia, which has a lot of neighborhoods that look exactly like this. The Claradril-addled mother drives down this suburban street past a crime scene reminiscent of the Dahmer apartment. I keep wanting to call the mom Donna because she screams Donna a lot into the phone. I don't know if she's actually called Donna, I just sort of assume she's talking to herself because, again, the law of identity has been questioned. Donna is not Donna. She confronts her own doppelganger, and as in most doppelganger media, the doppelgangers must fight. Similar to scenes in movies like Us, in Black Swan, in Annihilation. There's this one shot I don't know anything about photography or cinematography for that matter, but I assume this is using a telephoto lens to create a reality warping effect sort of similar to Inception, but it's much more surreal than Inception because Inception is too rationalistic. Inception bends space-time, but we always know why space-time is bending. It's been explained for us.
I got the whole story.
So it never feels surreal. Unedited footage of a bear ends with this cool series of shots of the mother's face lit up by the police sirens. I just think it's a really cool use of lighting. The video never spells out exactly what happened, but the implication is that the sleep-deprived mother has some kind of Medea complex and probably has murdered her own family in the vein of the Babadook. It's a 10 out of 10 mid-roll ad. This House Has People in It. This House Has People in It is a 2016 video, also from Adult Swim, also created by Alan Resnick, and also suburban horror. The whole video is ostensibly footage from a surveillance system in a suburban house. A lot of family drama is very efficiently conveyed in 10 minutes. The main plot concerns the 13-year-old daughter Madison, who is inexplicably sinking into the kitchen floor, causing her younger brother's birthday party to be neglected while a grandmother watches TV in a chair. The quotable line for me is at one point the father screams, "Women give each other pills all the time."
Did you give her? Why would I give her anything? Because you're women! Women give each other pills all the time!
Funny and true. This is what being a teenager felt like to me. For me, adolescence was sinking into the kitchen floor while your parents argue about what a problem you are. I guess that's my bias because I was an oldest child and somewhat of a problem child. A lot of people in the comments section identify with the younger son who has to quietly cope with his birthday party being canceled and eclipsed by the older sister's meltdown. This video is full of signs and symbols and is supplemented by an ARG on a website that seems like it no longer exists, but you can still find lots of footage of it on YouTube. So for people who really like the feeling of decrypting signs and symbols, you can watch that. I feel like just the 10-minute video stands on its own. For me, surreal art shouldn't be about figuring out the truth about, for example, why is the daughter sinking into the floor? It's an image. She's sinking into the floor because she feels like she is drowning for some reason. That's how dreams work. But the creators of this video very clearly have learned that when you upload something surreal online, lots of people are going to try to figure out what it really means. And so they've created a whole game for those people to play. I feel like there's some connection between this urge to decode surreal internet videos and conspiracy theories. A lot of the videos in this list have conspiracy theories about them, which I feel like is often motivated by people who feel the need to literalize their emotional experience of the surreal and try to reduce dream logic to factual thinking. It's again that excitement of decoding, the Jeffrey Beaumont feeling, seeing something that was always hidden.
I'm seeing something that was always hidden.
Maybe conspiracism is the surrealism of politics, treating news, the media, and all of reality like an ARG. Speaking of which, 11BX1371. On May 9, 2015, a YouTuber called AETBX uploaded a video whose title was just a series of blocks of binary code. The video got a lot of attention online after a tech news site called GadgetZZ posted an article about it, claiming to have received the video in the mail from Poland. The video then got posted to the creepy subreddit, and obviously everyone went crazy trying to decipher the various codes that the video is packed with. There's Morse code messages, cryptograms, all kinds of messages and images revealed in the spectrogram of the audio track. When people deciphered all this information, it turned out to contain images of murder victims, as well as the geographic coordinates of the White House, and the phrases, "You are already dead," and "Unalive the president." Edgy. I remember watching this video in 2015 and it seemed very scary at the time, but on rewatch, I'm not as much of a fan of this one. Maybe I've just consumed too much horror media, and the idea of a guy in a plague doctor mask in an abandoned sanatorium just feels like a cluster of cliches now. Or maybe after the last 9 years of American politics, edgy "Unalive the president" cryptograms just don't really feel that entertaining. But I feel like this video is worth mentioning specifically because this excitement and mania for decoding that it sparked online is kind of similar to QAnon Q-drop decoding. It's similar to an earlier online puzzle called Cicada 3301, initially posted to 4chan, supposedly to recruit quote-unquote intelligent individuals for some mysterious purpose. Obviously, if you want to get attention, it's a good idea to flatter the egos of weirdos online. The Cicada 3301 creator was actually considered a candidate for the possible identity of Q for a while and was interviewed in the Into the Storm documentary for that reason. But it's more evidence for my hypothesis that there's some connection between surrealism and conspiracy theory. The thrill of discovering secrets online combined with the thrill of puzzle solving and the kind of pseudo-spiritual excitement of awakening from an illusion. Surrealism could be considered dream art, and dreams are, I think, the source of a lot of people's idea that it's possible to awake from an illusory reality, which is a common thought in religion and conspiracy theories. Take the red pill down the rabbit hole, wake up sheeple. All of this is very exciting, and it made QAnon addictive, and I think it's still very much a risk to 21st century democracy and the future of our collective sanity. But it's also a fundamental human urge that I think we all feel, that I certainly feel. So we have to find a way, I guess, to balance dream logic and rationality in a way that allows us our creative psychic freedom, but without, destroying civilization. I feel like I'm being so dramatic and edgy in this video. Well, it's the power of suggestion. RuUnion with Katya and Detox. RuUnion with Katya and Detox is a short film directed by and starring drag queen Katya Zamolodchkova and fellow Drag Race contestant Detox, and it is a legitimately great short film about the death of an old woman, ? It probably is, as the title says, some kind of an autobiographical reflection on Katya's career and relationship with Drag Race. I do see it as some kind of rumination on addiction and fame, being trapped in cycles again. But I think it's too well made to be reduced to Drag Race commentary. This video makes me feel like I'm in the presence of a drag queen shaman. It heals the trauma of Obey the Walrus. Again, we have drag and disability, and this time it's grotesque, but I feel redemptive. The video is a series of surreal sketches that illustrate a narration in which every sentence is phrased, "Mother, I'm XYZ again."
Mother, the boundaries between what is real and not real are becoming porous again.
This is how I talk now. Mother, I'm theorizing about surreal meme videos for stoned teenagers on the internet again. Detox's black chevron hoodie obviously is a reference to Twin Peaks. And again, the issue is identity because it always is.
Mom, you're looking like me again.
The characters are the grandmother, the mother, and the 3 daughters. And we're meant to ask, are these 3 generations or are they one person at different stages of life? The video description says Katya explores persona, the past self, and the future self in RuUnion. I think the grandmother is Katya's future self and the daughters are her past. One commenter suggests that the daughters represent addiction, anxiety, and depression. I feel like it's probably not that specific, but something along those lines maybe.
Mother, I'm falling in love with myself from the past again. Mother, I'm making sweetheart romantic French kissing love to myself again.
In the Twilight video, we talked about how sex and romance often are concerned with the violation of boundaries, and in this case, that association is invoked to explore the boundaries between past, present, and future selves. Some people apparently experience this video as really dark and scary. Commenter Juliana FV sees the death of the grandmother at the end as a relapse into addiction and untimely death, followed by rebirth in the final shot. But to me, the ending always feels positive, or at least bittersweet. Mother, I've decided this life wasn't totally useless again.
Mother, I'm learning how to say goodbye again.
Learning how to say goodbye again. For me, that exhibits this calmness in the face of death that I want so badly for myself. So I find it inspiring. Like I said, I never watch Drag Race anymore, but this kind of surrealist identity fuckery is exactly what attracted me to drag in the first place. I wish it was all like this. Red Vern. Local 58, Contingency. One of the coolest trends in Surreal YouTube videos recently has been analog horror, which uses the aesthetics of VHS and other analog technology to create horror, sort of in the tradition of Poltergeist. It works really well on YouTube because there's a lot of weird like analog stuff that people discover and upload, so you can sort of buy the illusion that you're watching some like horrifying archive that someone has dug up somewhere. As far as I can tell, the trend was started by a YouTube channel called Local 58, which is created by Chris Straub, who is the author of the creepypasta Candle Cove. In my opinion, one of the few actually high quality creepypastas from back in the day. Local 58 is a fictional TV news channel. The first video on the channel is from October 2017, and it's called You Are on the Fastest Available Route. It uses a dash cam and what sounds like an early GPS guidance voice to tell a creepy story about a trip into a secluded, dark, rural area.
Rerouting. Make a U-turn. Your destination is behind you.
My favorite video on the channel is called Contingency, which is like a Cold War era public service announcement that encourages Americans in the event of a military defeat to commit mass unalivement. Somehow this video succeeds in executing that premise in a way that actually feels genuinely unsettling to me. These videos work for me as surrealism because something about them captures the feeling of like falling asleep in front of a TV set and like not being sure if you're hallucinating or in some kind of hypnagogic state where you're imagining these disturbing things on TV. Though even a lot of very young people seem to enjoy making and watching analog horror, even people who are too young to have actually remembered interacting with this technology themselves. So maybe there's something about this that transcends the uncanny memory element. I don't know, to explain that we'll need to find a 16-year-old to tell us why analog horror works for them. Blue channel, THALASIN. Okay, last video. Okay, we finally have a video from the 2020s. I've taken a historical approach in this video, but I wanted to do at least one from this decade. This is another analog horror video uploaded by the YouTuber Gooseworks. Again, we have some kind of TV infomercial, this time for a drug called THALASIN to treat AED, advanced emotional deterioration. Again, this video works for me because it induces that hypnagogic hallucination feeling. Do I need to explain hypnagogic? Okay, hypnagogic means in the moments before you fall asleep, where you're sort of like half conscious, you have sort of hallucinatory pseudo dreams. Like you'll hear someone saying your name, or you'll suddenly have a sensation of falling. The opposite is called hypnopompic, by the way, which is like when you wake up and you're still sort of half dreaming. Anyway, THALASIN makes me feel like I fell asleep in front of a TV in 1998, and I am hypnagogically hallucinating some kind of infomercial. THALASIN promises not only to treat AED, but also to, quote, expand the human emotional palette beyond natural emotions.
Cutting-edge brain mapping technology has not only allowed us to refine existing emotions, but has also allowed for the creation of new emotions.
So we get to see all these new emotions with corresponding diagrams of horrifying facial expressions.
These new emotions include degrance, humber, nage, dorselessness.
This is fun if you were a psychology major because the faces do kind of resemble like these. For some reason, psychology textbooks often have like
happiness, sadness, anger, fear.
Anyway, watch the video for yourself and you might get to experience degrance, nage, punish.
Transiveness.
I feel like I'm a little bit running out of things to say about surrealism, which is a sign I should probably end the video. But I feel like I have one more thing to say about the relationship between surrealism and nature. THALASIN promises the experience of unnatural emotions. In the liminality tangent, I feel like we talked about the checkerboard motif. Some people in the comments section of that one pointed out that it is like a sure sign of artificiality because there's no checkerboard motifs in nature. The monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey also feels uncanny for the same reason, that it's like the emergence of this thing that could not be a natural object. I feel like it's something that vaguely suggests suggests to you that you might be dreaming when you're no longer able to distinguish between the natural and the artificial, like when the natural appears artificial or the artificial appears natural. Anyway, that's probably enough yapping out of me. I am eager to see how younger generations will reinvent surrealism. Leave a comment. Wake up.